Proof that animals are evolving, Part 14. Firstly, here's a video of Rambo the orangutan casually driving a golf cart around a private zoo in Dubai. Rambo has apparently been driving since she was very young and has since graduated from small toy cars to golf carts. She even looks through the rearview mirror and slows down at turns, demonstrating better driving abilities than most humans. This video shows the 200 IQ intelligence of a wild hare. Knowing that the hunting dog is following its scent, the hare runs forward along the path before doubling back and running off in the opposite direction once the dog passes. Next we have I don't know what this is. What is this? Next please. Here's a video of a chimpanzee displaying impressive skills while taking a visual memory test. Chimps can actually perform this task far better than humans since they've developed excellent visual memory in order to spot dangers in the wild incredibly quickly. 2011, Chicago man Robert Lyons bludgeoned his mother with a champagne bottle before relentlessly stabbing her and pouring chemicals all over her body. He did this all because she refused to buy him skybox tickets for an upcoming Avril Lavigne concert. Robert was 39 years old at the time. This was the last photo taken of resistance leader Chiang Bin-Hua just moments before she was executed by bayonet. She led a Chinese guerrilla movement against the Japanese during the invasion of her country before she was captured in 1938. While in captivity, the 24-year-old was brutally tortured and gang raped by several guards but died with a defiant smile on her face. In 2022, 70-year-old Maya Murma was collecting water in India when an elephant suddenly trampled her. She was quickly rushed to the hospital, but ended up dying from her catastrophic injuries. When family members gathered for her funeral, the same elephant appeared, threw Murmu's body into the air, and trampled it again. In 2015, a man swimming near Huntington Beach, California, was suddenly struck in the back by a great white. After making it ashore and going to the hospital, doctors assured him that he'd be okay. But upon seeing his x-rays, they realized he had a cancerous tumor that they were just barely able to remove in time. In 1993, a surfer named John Doyle was attacked by a great white shark off the coast of West Africa. He made it to shore unable to walk, only to be mauled by a pride of lions on his way to the hospital. More than 250 stitches later, he survived both attacks and made a full recovery. In 2001, an 8-year-old boy was attacked by a 7-foot bull shark while standing in knee-deep water near Pensacola, Florida. The shark had bitten off one of the boy's arms before his uncle pulled it away and wrestled it to shore. After a park ranger shot the shark in the head, the boy's uncle retrieved the severed arm, put it on ice, and drove it to the hospital where it was successfully reattached. In 2021, University of Missouri student Danny Santoli was rushing to become a new member of the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity. Knowing the process was hard on him, his family urged him to back out, but he wanted to prove himself to the fraternity bros. On October 19th of that year, the fraternity held their Pledge Father reveal night, which would end up going down as one of the worst hazing disasters in American history. Along with the other pledges, Danny was blindfolded and led down to a basement where he was force-fed beer through a tube and told to finish an entire 750 of Tito's vodka. Around midnight, Danny was sitting on the couch in extreme distress with a blood alcohol level of .468, nearly 6 times the legal limit. Soon enough, Danny became unresponsive and was rushed to the hospital in cardiac arrest. He was later declared brain dead as a result of alcohol poisoning and spent the next 8 months in the hospital. He's now blind, unable to walk, talk, or do virtually anything by himself. 11 members of the frat were criminally charged for the horrific incident. In 1955, 24-year-old actor James Dean died in a car crash while driving his Porsche 550 Spider, which he nicknamed Little Bastard. After the accident, the car was towed to a garage in Los Angeles, and while it was being repaired, it fell off its jack and crushed a mechanic's legs. The engine and transmission were later sold to 2 professional racers, both of whom later crashed their vehicles during the same race and were seriously injured. The car's tires were also sold, and the new owner was eventually killed in yet another car crash. Over time, the stories of deaths and injuries associated with the car led to rumors of a curse. Some believed that the car was haunted and that anyone who came into contact with it would suffer misfortune. But in 1960, the car disappeared while being transported from Miami to Los Angeles. The car has never been found, and its whereabouts remain a mystery to this day. This was one of the last photos captured of Steve Jobs, the genius behind Apple. It was taken just a few days before he passed away from pancreatic cancer on October 5, 2011. During World War I, 20-year-old French soldier Albert Roche was found sleeping on duty and was sentenced to death for abandoning his post. But thankfully, a messenger arrived just moments before his execution to tell the full story. Albert had crawled for nearly 10 hours under enemy fire to rescue his wounded captain before passing out from exhaustion. In 2013, a Chinese businessman hired a hitman to take out his competitor for $282,000. But the hitman hired another hitman to do the job, offering $141,000. That man then hired another hitman, who hired another hitman, who hired another hitman. The fifth hitman, who was offered $14,000 for the job, tried convincing the target to fake his own death. But instead, he reported the threat to authorities, and all 6 men, including the original businessman, were sent to prison. The Dumbest Ways to Die, Part 13. In 1996, a New Orleans man tied a sausage around his leg with a rubber band and wore skinny jeans to appear as though he was packing. While he was having the time of his life at a nightclub, the rubber band caused a blood clot which traveled to his brain and killed him. In 2014, Kentucky pastor Jamie Coots was handling a rattlesnake during a church service when he was suddenly bitten. But instead of going to the hospital, Coots simply went home believing that God would save him. An ambulance was later sent to Jamie's home by concerned churchgoers, but his wife declined medical treatment despite her husband falling unconscious, and the pastor later died. In 2019, a Florida man thought it would be fun to drop large pieces of concrete from an overpass onto a highway below. He found the biggest one he could lift with rebar sticking out of it and dragged it to the edge of the overpass. As he was pushing it over, some rebar caught his pants, pulling him over the edge and right into oncoming traffic. As a child, Robert Downey Jr. was always surrounded by drugs. His father introduced him to marijuana when he was only 6 years old and allowed him to start drinking once he turned 8. By the time he became a teenager, Robert had already been addicted to cocaine, heroin, and prescription pills. RDJ struggled with these demons for more than 30 years before finally deciding to turn his life around in 2003. This was the last photo taken of Semra Aysel before she was pushed off the cliff by her husband Hakan. The pregnant 31-year-old fell for more than 1,000 feet and died immediately along with her unborn child. In 2013, an 8-year-old girl found the lifeless bodies of her parents, brother, and grandmother in her basement. They were apparently poisoned by highly toxic gas emitting from rotten potatoes after going down one by one to check on the person who went down before them. The only reason the girl didn't die was because her grandma must have left the door open before dying, allowing the gas to dissipate. To lose a third of his body weight for his role in The Machinist, where he weighed 120 pounds, Christian Bale pushed his body to extreme limits, consuming nothing but coffee, a can of tuna, and a single apple every day. His goal was to reach 100 pounds before producers had to stop him so that he wouldn't die, and the movie ended up being a total flop. He then had to regain 100 pounds in 6 months to star in Batman Begins, but then had to lose 30 pounds again before filming because he'd bulked too much. In 1996, 7-year-old Jessica Dubroff tried to fly an airplane across the United States but crashed during a thunderstorm. This resulted in a law banning children from flying. In 1987, Andy the Goose was born without feet, so his owner eventually fitted him with Nike sneakers to help him walk, turning him into a famous role model for disabled kids. But one day in 1991, Andy disappeared from home and was found in a local park the next day with his wings and head ripped off. Police were able to identify the killer but didn't reveal their identity to the public. In 1977, Muhammad Ali endured quite the beating in his 15-round fight with Ernie Shavers, one of the hardest-hitting boxers in history. Ali suffered so much brain damage that his speaking rate was permanently slowed down by 16% after the fight. Geoffrey Hudson was a courtier for King Charles I of England who was only 18 inches tall. After being insulted by an average-sized man in 1644, Geoffrey challenged him to a duel with pistols. His opponent came to the duel only armed with a water gun as a joke. But Hudson didn't take too kindly to this and fatally shot him in the forehead with a real gun. During a drug-fueled rampage in 2001, the Prince of Nepal killed 9 members of his family, including the King and Queen, at Kathmandu's National Palace. The prince then turned the gun on himself in an attempt to take his own life, then fell into a coma. As heir to the throne, the crown prince escaped any charges and was instead declared king of Nepal, but he only reigned for 3 days in the hospital before being declared brain dead and unfit to serve. According to a 2014 investigation, the car that Paul Walker died in had tires that were 9 years old. This likely contributed to Paul's racer friend losing control while driving around a corner at 93 miles per hour. It's a tragic example of why you should always change your tires after 6 years no matter how much they've been used. Roughly 200 people die on cruise ships each year, especially on those that carry a lot of seniors. So most ships have a small morgue on board prepared to store up to 10 bodies. In 2002, 13-year-old hockey fan Brittany Cecil was sitting in the stands of a Blue Jackets game when a deflected puck struck her in the temple, fracturing her skull. She died just 2 days before her birthday and remains the only fan fatality in NHL history. In November of 2021, zipline instructor Joaquin Romero fell to his death after sacrificing himself to save a customer. He had to let go of the zipline because he knew it would be too heavy to hold both he and his client, so he decided that he would be the one to die. A woman from Utah gave birth to 3 kids on 3 consecutive leap days, February 29th of 2004, 2008, and 2012. The odds of this happening are about 1 in 3.2 billion. In 2004, a pine tree was planted in LA to honor former Beatles member George Harrison, but it died 10 years later after being overwhelmed by an infestation of beetles. Jeremy Rodale was a longevity expert who popularized the term organic food. While filming an interview for the Dick Cavett Show at the age of 72, he said, "I've never felt better in my life and have decided to live to 100. But just minutes after saying this, Rodale died of a heart attack while still being filmed. In 1983, 22-year-old Michael Anderson Godwin was sentenced to death by electric chair after brutally murdering a young woman in South Carolina. But the electrocution ruling was later overturned and Godwin was only handed a life sentence. A few years later, he was sitting on his prison toilet trying to connect his headphones to the TV when he bit down on the wire and was electrocuted to death. As a child star, Drew Barrymore was thrust into the dark side of Hollywood at a very young age. Her mother started bringing her to dance clubs when she was only 9 years old, letting her dance with older men and even use hard drugs. She understandably struggled to cope with this extremely early exposure to adult vices, since she was forced into a 6-month rehab program by the age of 13, and then spent the next 18 months in a mental hospital after attempting to take her own life. After a tiger escaped from a Georgia zoo and killed a man in 2015, a PSA was issued on what not to do if you ever encounter a tiger. Don't approach it, don't run away, and definitely don't urinate. In an attempt to escape a forceful arranged marriage with her cousin, 21-year-old Pakistani woman Asia Bibi poisoned a container of milk at a family party, hoping that only her fiancé would drink it. But instead, it was used by Bibi's mother-in-law to make a dessert drink for the entire family. It was then served to 27 members of Bibi's family, killing 17 of them. Gordon Ramsay's father was a violent alcoholic who regularly abused he and his mother. One of his favorite things to do was to call Gordon a gay little boy because cooking was for poofs. He became so aggressive at times that Gordon and his mom often feared for their lives while at home. In 2017, a 9 weeks pregnant Brazilian woman suffered a stroke and was declared legally dead. Although doctors said the babies had no hope for survival, the brain-dead woman was kept alive for 123 days before delivering a healthy pair of twins. After growing up with a chronically bloated stomach, Sanju Bhagat went to the ER in 2006 with severe abdominal pain and difficulty breathing. Doctors were astonished to discover that the twin he must have absorbed in utero was still living in his abdomen and surviving off his blood supply. The half-formed twin had limbs, long fingernails, hair, and even genitalia. Doctors eventually removed the parasite and Bhagat made a full recovery. Prior to filming The Dark Knight, Heath Ledger locked himself in a hotel room and talked to only himself for 6 straight weeks. He said this helped him land more in the realm of a psychopath to prepare for his iconic role as the Joker. Many believe this extreme dedication was partially responsible for his accidental overdose on sleeping pills the next year. In 2020, a Florida man was arrested for allegedly sticking his hands in peanut butter and punching his neighbor who was allergic to nuts. If Barbie were a real person, she wouldn't be capable of lifting her own head and would have to walk on all fours due to her proportions. She would be severely anorexic and suffer from chronic diarrhea due to only having room for a few inches of intestines and half a liver. In 2013, a Brazilian woman confessed to lacing her cooter with poison so that her husband would die after going down on her. In 2006, 51-year-old Susan Walters was attacked by a hitman whom her husband had hired to kill her. But after finding out who sent him, she ended up killing him with her bare hands. At just under 2,000 years old, the oldest bottle of olive oil was discovered under the volcanic ash of Herculaneum. The discovery was extremely important to science since it shed some light on the molecular evolution of olive oil over time. The earliest known manufactured mirrors were found in Turkey and are approximately 8,000 years old. They were made of obsidian and had impressively good optical quality according to researchers. Built around 1300 BC, the Archidiko Bridge in Greece is the oldest arch bridge that's still in use today. It was used as a chariot bridge some 3,300 years ago. The world's oldest purse was found in a grave in Germany and was made sometime around 2500 BC. The fabric it was made of has disintegrated over the years, but it was studded with over 100 ancient dog teeth which remain intact. The Vimos coat is a 22-pound piece of iron chain armor made by hand from roughly 20,000 tiny rings. Known as the oldest completely preserved chainmail in the world, it was likely thrown into a Danish peat bog as a victory offering after battle some 1800 years ago. Carved ivory model of an eye was used to help teach students the anatomy of the eyeball in the 1800s. It can be unscrewed from its base to show the different parts of the eye, including the cornea, pupil, and iris. Here's a 2,000-year-old jade burial suit from the Han Dynasty of China. All 3,200 of the jade tiles were stitched together using thin gold wire. Here's a nearly complete carnix from 100 BC that was found in France in 2004. Made in the shape of a snarling boar, it was a horn used by the Iron Age Celts to intimidate their enemies in battle. This was the great bathtub of ancient Roman Emperor Nero. Made of porphyry, it can be found in the Vatican museums of Rome. A Viking skull was found in Dorset, England, with lined grooves in its teeth. They were likely dyed red to frighten opponents in battle. This is the original marble throne of Charlemagne as it can be found in Aachen, Germany. Between the years 790 and 1531, it served as the coronation throne for 31 kings of Germany. In 1890, some Russian gold miners discovered a 9-foot-tall totem pole in a peat bog. Dating back 12,000 years, it's the oldest known wooden sculpture in the world. The world's oldest pair of pants is a 3,300-year-old pair of wool trousers discovered in a Chinese cemetery. In the small village of Nashdafan, Iran, some of the oldest windmills in the world still spin. Made from natural clay, straw, and wood, the windmills have been milling grain for over 1,000 years. The world's oldest spear tip was discovered in England in 1911. It was likely made by Neanderthals around 400,000 years ago. Built around the 13th century, La Maison des Jeans is the oldest known house in France. Back then, houses were taxed based on the size of the ground floor, so they were often built with a smaller foundation than the rest of the house. The world's oldest light bulb that still works has been burning since 1901 and can be found at a California firehouse. Its longevity has baffled scientists for decades since it's been left on for 24 hours a day for almost 122 years straight. George Wallace was a governor of Alabama who openly supported Jim Crow and segregation. Once his term was over, he helped get his wife elected so that he could subvert his term limit and stay in office. To do so, he kept her cancer diagnosis a secret from her, knowing that the treatment would negatively affect her ability to run. Thus, the first female governor of Alabama died within 200 days of her term. Dewey the cat died in 1910, but meant enough to his owner to be honored with a gravestone that still stands 113 years later. It reads, "He was only a cat, but he was human enough to be a great comfort in hours of loneliness and pain." In 1950, herpetologist Kevin Budden caught a deadly taipan snake by hand and hitchhiked to town while holding it. At some point, he lost his grip and was bitten, but managed to bag the snake and made a random truck driver promise to get it to researchers. Kevin succumbed to the venom the next day, but the driver kept his promise, and the snake was used to create the first taipan antivenom in history. In 2021, a Pennsylvania special ed teacher sexually assaulted a 14-year-old student. She then got out on bail and continued meeting with the boy until one day she saw police approaching and shot herself right in front of him. In 2010, 80-year-old Maria de Jesus Arroyo was pronounced dead after suffering a heart attack and brought to an LA morgue. A few days later, morticians returned to pull her body from the freezer and found her corpse suddenly covered in bruises as if she was beaten up. It was later determined that she was still alive and tried to get out, breaking her nose in the process, but she eventually froze to death. In 2005, the Liverpool soccer team reached the European Champions League final against AC Milan, but they were down 3-0 at halftime and defeat looked inevitable. That's when depressed Liverpool fan Mark Houghton had seen enough and decided to take his own life. But in the second half, Liverpool managed to score 3 times to tie it up, and ended up winning on penalties in one of the greatest comebacks in team history. In 2013, Zac Efron was running through his house with socks on when he suddenly slipped. He smashed his face into the corner of a granite fountain so hard that it shattered his jaw and nearly killed him. He was immediately knocked unconscious, and when he woke up, part of his chin was hanging off his face. In response to more recent plastic surgery rumors, Zac claimed that his cheek muscles overgrew to compensate for the muscles that were permanently damaged from that injury. Union Army soldier Jacob Miller was shot in the forehead during the Civil War. Left for dead, he somehow woke up a few hours later and lived on for another 54 years. Mac Ray Evans was a serial killer who used to work for Caltrans throughout the 1950s and 60s. He'd bury his victims, who were mostly children, in places where he would later help build the highways on top of. Many of his victims were never found and are likely still under some of the California highways that thousands of people drive over each day. This photo was taken at a zoo in India just moments before this white tiger dragged this man into his den and mauled him to death. The man apparently climbed up the fence to get a better view of the tiger, but ended up slipping and falling into the cage. Flat earther and daredevil Mike Hughes died in 2020 after crash landing his rocket he made to prove that the Earth is actually flat. In 2011, 3 teenagers from Utah stood on some train tracks to take a selfie next to a passing train. But they didn't hear the second train coming from the other direction, and all 3 were killed almost instantly. In 2011, a New York man died while riding his motorcycle at a helmet law protest. Medical experts said the only reason he died was because he wasn't wearing a helmet. In 2022, personal trainer Tom Mansfield accidentally overdosed on caffeine. He apparently miscalculated the amount of powder he needed and drank the equivalent of 200 cups of coffee in one. A killer whale off the coast of Washington once started the trend of wearing a dead salmon on its head. Other orcas in the pod started doing it too, and soon enough other pods in the area had picked up on the fad. The behavior had faded by the next summer, making it one of the first cultural trends ever observed in nature. Here's an amazing video of a rat using a stick to set off a trap so that it can safely snag a treat. As a result of all the rats we've killed with traps over the centuries, we've basically forced them to start evolving toward the usage of tools. This thoughtful otter at a Chinese aquarium is more helpful and productive than most people you'll ever work with. This is just one example of why otters are said to be one of the smartest animals in the water. That's adorable. The U.S. Navy's Marine Mammals program has started teaching California sea lions how to play video games. The program has trained over 100 sea lions and dolphins in underwater tasks that they can perform better than humans. These games seek to improve not only their cognitive function, but also their mental health and happiness, since they genuinely enjoy playing them. For most of his life, former jock Jason Padgett believed that math was stupid and pointless. But that all changed in 2002 when he was badly beaten outside of a karaoke bar, resulting in a severe concussion. The very next day, he suddenly woke up and had miraculously become a math genius. Thanks to an extremely rare condition called acquired savant syndrome, Jason could now see the world in complex geometric shapes and fractals. Here's a 1923 photo of Russian leader Vladimir Lenin, by which point he had suffered 3 strokes and was completely mute. In 2012, Anthony Omari took a machete to the face while defending a Kenyan orphanage against attacking thieves. He saved 37 orphans, and his story helped raise over $80,000 for the orphanage. Many houses that people say are haunted have been found to contain high levels of carbon monoxide or other poisons that can cause hallucinations. This may explain why haunted houses are usually older homes, which are more likely to contain old and defective appliances. 1996, mountain climber Beck Weathers and his team attempted to scale Mount Everest. But after coming down with a bad case of snow blindness, Weathers got stuck in a severe blizzard with a wind chill of -100 degrees and soon fell into a hypothermic coma. He miraculously survived, but had to have his nose and both hands amputated as a result of severe frostbite. Nicknamed Mr. Titanic, this was the last photo taken of French diver and Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargeolet. He saw the Titanic 37 different times before dying on his 38th trip on board OceanGate's Titan submersible. In 1986, a young Indian flight attendant named Nirja Banat was on a plane that was hijacked. The terrorists were targeting Americans, so she hid the passports of all 44 Americans on board. Instead of saving herself, she helped the other passengers escape and died while shielding 3 children from a hail of gunfire. One of those children is now a captain for a major airline and says that Banat was his #1 inspiration. In 2004, Thomas and Jackie Hawks decided to sell their 55-foot yacht to spend more time with their family. Soon enough, former Power Rangers actor Skylar Delian contacted the couple saying he was interested in purchasing. Tom and Jackie were suspicious of Skylar at first, but they became more receptive when his pregnant wife Jennifer and their other child came to the next meeting, so they agreed to take him on a test run of the boat. Skylar brought with him 2 associates who, unbeknownst to Tom and Jackie, turned out to be former convicts. Once they were on the boat, the 3 men beat Thomas and Jackie, overpowered them with tasers, tied them up, and forced Thomas to sign the yacht away to Skylar. Afterwards, they tied the couple to the boat's anchor and threw them overboard to drown. Their bodies were never recovered. Days afterwards, Delian tried to empty the couple's bank account, but the entire plot was soon foiled when the accomplices confessed to the heinous murders. Thankfully, Skylar and Jennifer Delian will now spend the rest of their lives rotting away in prison.